All right, so in the world of financial compliance, you quickly learn that not all customers carry the same amount of risk. That's why today, we're breaking down the 3 essential levels of Know Your Customer due diligence: simplified, customer, and enhanced. Let's jump right in.
So this is the big question, right? Every compliance professional on the planet has to answer this, and getting it right is everything. It protects your company from crime, it protects your reputation, and it keeps the regulators off your back. But if you get it wrong, well, that's when you see those multi-million-dollar fines and end up as the next cautionary tale. This isn't just theory, it's your frontline defense.
Okay, so the easiest way to wrap your head around all this is with a simple framework. Just think of it as a risk-based ladder. The whole idea behind modern KYC is that the amount of scrutiny you apply to a customer has to match the level of risk they bring. It's all about matching your effort to the potential threat.
And this lays it out perfectly. Down at the bottom rung, for your lowest risk clients, you've got simplified due diligence. The middle rung, which is your default, your standard for most customers, that's customer due diligence. And then, at the very top, for the highest risk clients, you got to climb all the way up to enhanced due diligence. It's a really intuitive ladder of increasing scrutiny.
So let's start at the bottom of our ladder. We're talking about simplified due diligence, or SDD for short. This is really reserved for customers that pose a verifiably low risk of being tangled up in any kind of financial crime.
The key word here is obviously simplified. But listen, simplified doesn't mean lazy or cutting corners. It's about applying a proportional, much more efficient level of review where the risk is just incredibly low. It's a streamlined process built for entities that are already transparent and heavily regulated.
So, who gets this kind of treatment? Well, think about the big players, major publicly traded companies whose finances are already under a massive microscope, or other regulated banks and financial institutions. Government bodies and even huge supranational organizations like the UN or the EU fall into this bucket. The logic is pretty simple. They're already playing by their own strict transparency and reporting rules, which dramatically lowers their risk from the get-go.
Okay, let's make this real. Imagine a giant, publicly traded pharmaceutical company, a name you'd recognize instantly, walks in and wants to open a new corporate account. The alarm bells aren't exactly ringing off the hook, are they?
So here's the key. Your compliance ask is minimal. You'll just need to verify its registration number and confirm that it's actively listed on a major stock exchange. The paperwork is light because, honestly, their public filings already tell you pretty much everything you need to know.
Okay, time to climb up one rung. Let's see how things change when we get to customer due diligence, or CDD. This is your baseline, your standard operating procedure for the vast majority of your customers.
You can think of CDD as the bedrock of any solid KYC program. It's that standard process of collecting and verifying key info to make sure you know who your customer is, you understand what they do, and you can comfortably assess them as a standard or moderate risk.
So for CDD, you're gathering the fundamentals. You need to verify their identity with the government ID, you got to confirm their address with something like a utility bill, and you need to understand the nature of their business or their job. But, and this is so important, CDD is not a one-and-done check at onboarding. It demands ongoing monitoring of their transactions to make sure their activity makes sense. If something changes, if it starts to look weird, you might have to escalate them up the ladder to EDD.
Here's our next scenario for you. A brand new local clothing boutique, a small business in a really low-risk industry, applies for a loan to expand. This is bread and butter stuff for any bank.
Now, the compliance ask here is definitely more involved than with SDD. In this case, you'll need to verify the personal ID and address of the business owner. You'll also take a look at the business's financials and make sure that its purpose, selling clothes, lines up with the kinds of transactions you expect to see. It's thorough, but it's not a full-blown investigation. Yet.
And now, let's head to the very top of the ladder, enhanced due diligence, or EDD. This is reserved for clients who present the absolute highest risk of being involved in financial crime, and because of that, they require our most intense level of scrutiny.
I want to be super clear here. EDD is not just about collecting more documents. It's a totally different beast. It's a fundamentally investigative process. It's about digging deep, deep, deep to understand the full picture of a high-risk customer, all to protect your institution from massive legal, financial, and reputational damage.
So who automatically gets this top-tier treatment? Well, you've got your politically exposed persons, or PEPs. That's a classic. Customers from countries known to have weak anti-money laundering regulations are another trigger. Certain industries, like casinos or money service businesses, are just inherently high risk. And finally, any company with a confusing, complex, or deliberately murky ownership structure is going to get an immediate upgrade to EDD. Now, this is an absolutely critical concept in EDD, and one that trips people up all the time: the difference between source of funds and source of wealth. Source of funds is about a single transaction. Where did the money for this specific deposit come from? But source of wealth, that's the whole story. How did this person accumulate their entire fortune over their lifetime? With EDD, you have to investigate both.
Okay, final scenario, and this one is definitely high stakes. A very wealthy person, who your screening system has flagged as a foreign politically exposed person, wants to invest several $1 million with your firm. This is an immediate, all-hands-on-deck EDD case.
The compliance ask here is intense. You are not just taking their word for it. You need to launch a deep dive investigation to verify their entire source of wealth. You're going to conduct extensive adverse media searches to see if they're tied to any corruption or scandals, and you're going to set up enhanced continuous monitoring on their account where every single transaction gets scrutinized.
All right, we've gone from the bottom of the ladder all the way to the top. So now, let's boil all of this down into a few key takeaways to really make sure this knowledge sticks.
Here's the 30-second summary. The 3 levels create a risk-based ladder. Your default is always standard CDD. From there, you can simplify down to SDD for verifiably low-risk clients, like public companies, and you absolutely must intensify and escalate up to EDD for high-risk clients, like PEPs. The risk always dictates the diligence.
And if you're studying for an exam or just want to lock this in, here are 5 points to write down. Number 1, risk dictates diligence. That is the golden rule. 2, SDD is for the verifiably low risk. Think public companies and governments. 3, CDD is your default standard for most folks. 4, EDD is a deep investigation, not just more paperwork for your high-risk profiles. And number 5, always remember the difference. Source of wealth is the big picture of their entire net worth, not just the funds for a single transaction.
And that brings us to a final thought. The world of financial crime never sits still. With the rise of digital assets, AI, and all sorts of new tech, the risks are changing faster than ever. It leaves us with a really interesting question to think about. What will the next rung on this risk ladder even look like in the years to come?